Stanley's longtime assistant director who worked with him on The Shining, Barry Lyndon, and Eyes Wide Shut is here to share some of his thoughts about working with Mr. Kubrick. Please welcome Brian Cook.
Good evening. Looking at those clips, it's hard to believe that was over 30 years ago. It seems only yesterday we were running around that maze. All the sets were built in the studio and on the back lot at Elstree, of course only 10 minutes from Stanley's house. Stanley and production designer Roy Walker did a fantastic job of creating the sets, and along with Garrett Brown, the American inventor of the Steadicam system, created a wonderful look for the film. Yet again, Stanley was ahead of his time, a true visionary. He was always looking for something new, technically, and the use of Steadicam was in its early stages of development. Of course, today, 30 years later, it's used on all the major movies. There are very few producer-directors who have the self-confidence to control every aspect of a movie. Stanley knew most technicians' jobs better than they did, and if he didn't, he made it his business to find out. He used many fine cameramen, costume designers, production designers, assistant directors, editors, but also promoted young technicians, as he had a great eye for spotting up-and-coming talent and educating them. Milena Canonero seems to win an Oscar every other year, was a location photographer at the start of Barry Lyndon, and finished up winning an Oscar for costumes. The only other director I personally worked with who had as much talent in production design and photography as Stanley is Ridley Scott, another great director. Stanley, of course, with his producer's hat on, always saw the budget advantages of giving young people he previously worked with breaks. I never thought Stanley fancied paying 25 grand a week to a cameraman when he was controlling the entire look of the movie himself. Some people have said Stanley was more concerned with the technique of filmmaking and less about the actors. I certainly never thought that. And Stanley always gave actors tremendous room in which to express themselves and was very patient with them. I think he enjoyed working with actors, particularly the artists he'd worked with in the past. I know that Jack enjoyed his time on The Shining, as I've been lucky enough to work with him on 2 other occasions. We've often talked about the film. In fact, whilst we were making The Pledge, I used to ask Jack if he wanted to rehearse a shot. He'd always say to me, "Brian, we rehearsed enough on The Shining to last me the rest of my career. Just shoot it." The one area of filmmaking in which Stanley had no peers was in his choice of music. Music's so important, I cannot believe when I look at some budgets the ridiculously low figure producers think you need to create a great film score. Young filmmakers beware of falling into this trap and don't wait until post-production to address this problem, as by then it's too late, as 90% of the budget has been spent and you can make no adjustments. Music can make a good movie into a memorable one. Another small example of Stanley spotting young talent was a conversation I had with him before going off to shoot the second unit of Barry Lyndon in Germany. Stanley had asked me what my ambitions were in film. I said I thought my talent, if indeed I had any, would be more towards producing than directing, but I was not sure. He said to me, "I watched a film last night that is yet to get distribution. If you want to be a producer, go to Australia and find this director and hook up with him. He'll be a great director one day." The film was Picnic at Hanging Rock, and the director was Peter Weir. As always, Stanley was ahead of his time. Stanley Kubrick was a fantastic filmmaker who was totally unique, and it was my pleasure to have worked with him on 3 occasions. As for my own career, I did go on to produce several films. However, if Stanley is watching, I think he would be amused to know that the one that I also directed was called Call Me Kubrick. Thank you.